Hi, my name's Chad Young. I'm a digestion and nutrition specialist with a degree in physiology from The Ohio State University. Today we're going to talk about bile flow. Most people are not familiar with bile, what it is, or the purpose that it has in our body, but it's one of the biggest digestive issues next to lack of stomach acid. It's very important that individuals understand how their bodies are supposed to work. That way, they can avoid health issues. Bile is a substance that our body makes. It's made by our liver. The reason the liver makes bile is it's pulling toxins and waste out of our bloodstream. It puts it in the bile to protect itself from these toxins. This substance is supposed to be moved into the intestines and excreted when we eat meals. The problem occurs when the bile gets too thick and is unable to move, therefore unable to excrete toxins or to perform its other functions. So we're going to take a close look at this since it's such a common underlying cause of many health issues today. The second part of your digestion after the food leaves the stomach, it goes into the intestines. And this is where your body is supposed to start breaking down the fat that was consumed in the meal. It also cools off the acidic food product before it moves through the rest of the digestive tract. This is an extremely important function that most people aren't aware of either. And as it does these processes, it contains the toxins that the liver removed from the blood and they are excreted. Most people have some degree of impaired bile flow and not even aware of it. In healthy digestion, a sufficient amount of bile is moved into the intestines to aid in digestion, depending on how much bile is needed at that particular time. Over time, even a small digestive issue or food that's entering the system undigested because of lack of digestive fluids can cause bigger health issues if they are not corrected. Let's look at what good bile flow is supposed to look like. This is normal. The body has a detoxification system, and the liver produces bile with these toxins that were removed from the bloodstream. This can include old cholesterol or dead cells, also toxins that are brought in by our environment or created internally in the body because foods are not broken down properly. So the liver makes the bile. The gallbladder is like a trash can in the body. It actually stores the bile until the bile is needed for digestion. So the body is very efficient. Not only is it removing these toxins, it's also using that substance to aid in digestion. So the body is very efficient when this is moving the way it is supposed to move. So bile flows into the intestines and then it's exited out through the back door. So you can see a better picture of this. I'm going to darken the picture so you can really see how the flow is supposed to occur, because this will be important in understanding this in later slides. So you can see where the bile is created in the liver, moved to the gallbladder for storage. As needed, it's supposed to be able to flow into the intestines to aid in digestion. So just like brushing our teeth or going to get our oil changed in our car or charging our cell phone, you have to do some maintenance sometimes to have things work properly. we were never educated on bile. Now that we know that bile is supposed to be moving into the intestines when we're eating a higher fat content meal, or there's a sufficient amount of stomach acid that needs to be neutralized, we can monitor that. So we need to make sure that we keep this monitored and maintained. By ensuring steps 1 and 2 are done correctly, the rest of the digestive tract is usually healthy also. Since most people were never introduced to bile, I want to make sure that they have a very good foundation. So let's look at a close-up of what good bile flow looks like. So again, it's a detoxification system that our body is constantly excreting toxins and waste from our bloodstream. And the way that it does that is the liver pulls the toxins and waste and makes a substance called bile. Once the liver makes the bile, it moves it into the gallbladder for storage. And it's stored here until there's a meal and the body senses that it needs to release some of this digestive fluid onto the meal. It does that by excreting the bile through a small duct that enters the intestines. Once that happens, the bile with the toxins is removed from the body out the back door. That's how good bile should flow from being produced, stored, and exiting the body. This happens in healthy digestion. Now, just like stomach acid, the body senses how much digestive fluids it needs. Stomach acid, as we mentioned, is a problem with producing stomach acid because of lack of chloride. The body doesn't have a problem making bile. It's constantly filtering this stuff out of the bloodstream. But proper function, the body should be excreting some bile into the intestines. And the more stomach acid or fat that's contained in a meal requires the body to release more bile for that particular meal. And the reason it does that is higher fat content foods need more bile to emulsify them so they are actually broken down and able to be utilized by the body. And higher hydrochloric acid meals, so if someone eats a meal that's high in protein, the stomach is supposed to produce a lot of stomach acid, and also the body senses that and produces adequate amount of bile to cool off that stomach acid. So it's very important that we monitor stomach acid production and bile flow to make sure that there's no signs that they're lacking the amount that is needed for a particular meal. And we can do that by observing symptoms, and there's also some self-tests that can indicate bile flow, which we'll cover a little bit later. There's a key chemical reaction between the stomach acid and the bile. This is what's so special on human digestion. This is what breaks the nutrition out of the food so the body's actually able to absorb the nutrition in the proper form. So when an individual eats a meal that's high in fat, food enters the system, it's neutralized by the acid. Then as it moves into the intestines, it's met by bile, appropriate amount of bile for that meal. And there's a chemical reaction that occurs. This chemical reaction is needed to fully liberate the nutrition from the food into a usable form so our body can utilize it. Here's an example of that reaction. The food that has mixed with the hydrochloric acid, stomach acid, is now moving into the small intestines to meet with the bile. The important thing to keep an eye on with bile flow is it can become too thick to flow properly from the gallbladder into the intestines. So, a good way to think about this is if you think about a bottle of ketchup. I'm sure everybody's experienced where they want to use ketchup and they have no problem with it flowing out of the bottle. Then other times you go to use the ketchup and the ketchup does not want to flow out of the bottle. It's become too thick and viscous and cannot flow its intended place, which is on your plate. So that's poor flow. The reason I mention this is it's our responsibility to monitor and maintain bile flow. If we show signs that our bile is getting too thick and viscous to flow properly by monitoring the symptoms and self test, an individual could benefit by taking steps that can help their bile to thin out and start flowing naturally again. That's proper monitoring and maintaining of bile flow in the body for digestive and detoxification functions. Another way you can look at this, the importance of bile and digestion is just to make sure that it's present in the amounts that's needed. So if you think of a simple pipe, that's the pipe that the bile flows through is supposed to support toxins. It's set up to do a function, and that function is to move into the intestines as it's needed. So we want to monitor that this is happening. The problem occurs when there's too much waste, and that intended function is not able to happen because there's too much waste causing the bile to get too thick and it will not flow through the structure that it's intended to flow through. So it does not reach the intestines to cool off the acid, which can cause chronic diarrhea. Also, the toxins aren't leaving the system like they're supposed to, and that can cause other problems getting backed up in the system. Monitoring for signs of bile not entering the intestines and flowing out the back door. We want to keep an eye on this and monitor and maintain it. So let's look at a close up of poor bile flow. If an individual was trying to improve their health, along with ensuring they had proper amount of stomach acid for digestion, ensuring they have proper bile flow would be a very important step for them to help improve their health. So again, the toxins from your blood, which are normal, there's toxins and waste that build up in your blood, like dead cholesterol, metabolic waste, and waste products from medications, processed foods, or other things that enter our system that cannot be utilized as fuel. It's considered a toxin and has to be removed. So, as your liver makes the bile from these toxins, an excessive amount of toxin that's having trouble flowing into the intestines actually gets backed up. So the toxins get pushed back into the liver and back into the bloodstream and is stored as fat or can be pushed out of the skin. So people that are showing signs of poor bile flow or their saliva pH is a 6.5 or lower may be storing excess fat or having skin issues from these toxins not being able to flow into their intestines and out the back door. An individual that is experiencing signs of poor bile flow would benefit by reducing the things that are thickening the bile and also taking steps to help thin the bile so it can move into the intestines properly. If an individual is experiencing chronic diarrhea, a loose stool, or they're having a bowel movement more than 2 or 3 times a day, that could be an indication they're not getting enough bile moved into the intestines to cool down the acidic food product. If someone's experiencing loose stool or diarrhea, they can take steps to correct that. A major problem, not only is it uncomfortable and it burns your intestines and can cause structural damage, but also the food product is moving through the system so quickly that it doesn't have time to absorb. The whole purpose of eating the nutrition is counterproductive if it's not cooled down and slowed down and able to be absorbed. The food is supposed to be acidic in the stomach to kill the bacteria and start to break down the protein. As it moves into the intestines, the body senses that and starts to release the proper amount of bile from the gallbladder. However, if the bile is too thick because of excess toxins in the system, it's unable to flow into the intestines. Right here is where it is supposed to meet the bile. If the bile is unable to flow into the intestines, that food is not cooled down, and the body will move excessive water into your intestines to help cool down the food product so it doesn't burn the intestinal walls. And that creates diarrhea. The acidic food is in the lower intestines where it's not supposed to be acidic. It was supposed to be cooled down by the bile. And that leads to discomfort, undigested food. It could cause all sorts of different health issues over time if it's not treated. But we don't want acidic product going down into the intestines. It needs to be cooled off by the bile before it moves down into the intestines. Symptoms and signs of poor bile flow. We've already went over a lot of these. Let's help our liver out. Our liver's trying to do all these functions. It has over 200 functions it's doing on a daily basis. And one of them's to excrete toxins. So we want to make sure that if we can take steps to keep the bile thin, the liver's able to function properly and it doesn't get backed up and congested. So we'll want to look for signs of a saliva pH. If it's 6.5 or lower, that's a clear sign that bile may be too thick and not flowing into the intestines like it should be. Passing gas, weight gain, chronic diarrhea, Crohn's-like symptoms, IBS-like symptoms. Again, that stomach acid needs to be cooled down. Otherwise, acidic food product is burning the walls of the intestines, can cause inflammation. Plus, the undigested food breeds bacteria and causes endotoxins. Bile that's backed up too long in the gallbladder can form into gallstones because it's being concentrated. I'm sure everybody's heard of someone who's had gallstones. That may have been prevented if they took steps to help thin their bile when it was needed. That way, the bile could flow out of the gallbladder and not been concentrated into stones. So again, the toxins, let's help our liver out. Our liver's doing its job. We need to do our job of monitoring and maintaining that it has a pathway that the bile is able to move out of. Toxins backed up in the system can cause high blood pressure, nausea, pushed out through the skin, cause acne. Light colored stool, the stool becomes like lighter than the color of cardboard. That's an indication that bile may not be flowing into the intestines also. The toxins have to be dealt with. It's our responsibility to make sure they're dealt with in the appropriate form. Otherwise, the body has to use different backup mechanisms which were not intended in a healthy digestive system. So you may be wondering what causes poor bile flow. Well, there's a lot of things that can cause it. Undigested food, anything that thickens bile. Most people aren't aware that a lot of the supplements or vitamins or gummies or probiotics and things that they're taking, usually if they're bought from a grocery store, they have a lot of binders. And I see people doing things that they deem as healthy, and actually it's hurting their overall digestive tract because it's thickening the bile. Binders, chemicals, processed foods, a lot of stuff in today's society. Polyunsaturated fats are highly marketed as healthy fats, but people do not understand that those fats go rancid at around room temperature. So when they enter our bloodstream, which is a lot higher temperature than room temperature, these so called healthy fats have to be dealt with like toxins. They're not usable. Grains thicken the bile, synthetic medications have to be excreted from the blood, and that thickens the bile. By no means am I saying not to take medications. I'm just bringing it to your attention what different things can cause bile to become thick and inhibit its ability to function properly. It can get restricted because of the pathway being constricted. In most cases, it's because the bile is getting too thick, but it's important to note that it could be a structural thing too, and that could be onset by other issues. Things that can improve poor bile flow. If an individual wanted to improve their health, a great place to start would be make sure that their detoxification system is working properly. So they want to watch for signs that their bile may have trouble flowing into the intestines. We want to make sure it flows into the intestines and out the back door. We do that by being aware of the symptoms. Using a supplement called Beet Flow has been very successful in helping people thin their bile. Beet Flow is a natural supplement that is made from concentrated beet greens. The juice in the beet greens has the ability to help naturally thin the bile. By helping thin the bile, it's able to move from the gallbladder into the intestines. If someone's showing signs of poor bile flow, this could be a supplement that could be very beneficial to help them get their digestive fluids back in a condition to where it's functioning properly and is able to move from the gallbladder into the intestines when needed in the appropriate amounts. Increase unrefined salt intake, dilate biliary pathway, and you can do that with a coffee suppository. So at Digest Real Food, you can go to Digestive Coaching. There's also a link below this video. And throughout the website, it's on the sidebar also. This is a program that's been highly successful. I've seen many other people use this approach to be effective in figuring out what is causing the underlying issues that's contributing to different symptoms that that individual may be experiencing. What I do is I help you interpret what your test scores and your symptoms are indicating. And then I show you what I would do if I was faced with the same test scores and symptoms, educate you on what other people have done successfully when they found themselves in the same situation or dealing with the same issues. Once I upload that report to your account, it's normal you'll have some questions, so I'm available to answer those questions. So it's just like a personal training session to get up to speed on what you're doing, how to do it, and this walks you through everything. So on the sign up page here, you want to make sure you check out the client requirements. It's just a release form. Once you sign up, you can go to Coalition for Health Education. That's just where you set up your online account to plug in any test scores and self-test. So if you're not familiar with these self-tests, they're not difficult to do. It's just they need to be explained to you. You click on self-test here, and it will take you to the self-testing page on my site. As you can see, here's the program again. And this will show you the equipment you need. I highly recommend these strips. The other strips are very difficult to read. The whole purpose of testing is to get accurate readings. So most people use their phone for the timer. Most people will have to purchase some pH strips. these good ones that are easy to read for urine and saliva pH. It's also nice to have your own blood pressure monitor so you can get consistent readings at home. And it'll have the tracking sheets and everything. But you don't have to be concerned with all that. The first step is to get signed up. Come on to this page. Make sure that you can meet these requirements. And then you want to go ahead, and if you're ready to help your body start functioning, and you're ready to learn how to take effective steps, you want to click here. Now, as soon as you sign up, I'll be sending you a detailed email. So don't get too caught up in trying to figure everything out, because this walks you through it. And this program's nice because a lot of people are busy. They don't have time to trial and error. They don't have time to go out and educate themselves on what to do and how to do it. It makes sense to do a program that's addressing underlying causes and clearly demonstrates to you why you're taking certain steps to get a desired result. I'm really excited to work with you. I hope you take the initiative to improve your health, and I'm here to help you when you are ready. I hope to hear from you soon.